Are you ready to be chilled to the bone? Join me at Midnight Murmurs, where we explore the darkest secrets of Misty Hollows. Follow the group of teenagers as they face their fears and fight for their lives against malevolent forces in the woods. With twists and turns at every corner, this is a story you won't want to miss. Like and subscribe to Midnight Murmurs to stay up to date with all the spine-tingling tales. Chapter 1: The Legend of Misty Hollows. Misty Hollows was a small town nestled in the heart of the dense forest. Its inhabitants were a close-knit community, wary of outsiders and fiercely protective of their way of life. The town had always been shrouded in a cloak of mystery, surrounded by rumors and legends about the forest that loomed on its outskirts. The forest was said to be haunted by malevolent spirits, and strange things were said to happen there at night. The townspeople were superstitious and believed that the woods were cursed. Over the years, people had disappeared without a trace, and many had attributed it to the forest's dark secrets. As the sun set on Misty Hollows, the town took on an eerie, almost otherworldly quality. The sound of rustling leaves and distant animal calls could be heard echoing through the woods. The townspeople would huddle in their homes, afraid to venture out after dark. Despite their fears, some teenagers were brave enough to explore the woods. They would sneak out at night, fueled by the thrill of adventure and the desire to uncover the truth about the forest. But what they discovered was far more sinister than they could have ever imagined. As the legend of Misty Hollows grew, so did the fear and unease of its inhabitants. They knew that something was lurking in the forest, waiting to strike. And they knew that it was only a matter of time before the darkness descended upon them. Chapter 2: The Expedition. The teenagers couldn't resist the lure of the unknown, and so they ventured into the dense forest of Misty Hollows. They were armed with flashlights, provisions, and a burning curiosity to uncover the secrets that lurked in the woods. As they made their way through the thick foliage, they came across strange symbols etched into trees, and eerie whispers that seemed to be carried on the wind. The air grew colder, and the trees loomed closer, as if they were trying to swallow the teens whole. Despite their growing unease, the teenagers continued on, driven by a mixture of curiosity and fear. They stumbled upon a clearing where they saw strange patterns etched into the ground. The symbols looked ancient, and the teens couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Suddenly, they heard a rustling in the nearby bushes, and before they knew it, they were surrounded by a pack of wild dogs. The teens tried to run, but the dogs were too fast, and they soon found themselves trapped. As they huddled together, hoping for some way out, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees, dressed in a cloak and carrying a staff. The figure looked like some sort of sorcerer, and the teenagers were terrified. The sorcerer spoke in a language they couldn't understand and gestured for them to follow him deeper into the woods. They had no choice but to comply, and so they followed the strange figure into the heart of the forest. As they journeyed deeper into the woods, the teenagers realized that they were hopelessly lost. The trees looked different, and the symbols on the ground grew more intricate and foreboding. They were beginning to wonder if they would ever find their way out when suddenly they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone temple, surrounded by strange carvings and symbols. The teenagers were hesitant to approach the temple, but the sorcerer gestured for them to enter. They stepped inside, and immediately they felt a sense of dread wash over them. The temple was dark and foreboding, and it was filled with the stench of death. As they made their way through the temple, they saw strange symbols etched into the walls, and they heard the faint whispers of voices long gone. At the center of the temple, they found what they had been searching for. A strange artifact, a glowing crystal orb, lay nestled in a bed of bones. The teenagers were stunned, and they didn't know what to do. The sorcerer gestured for them to take the orb, and before they knew it, they were surrounded by a bright light. When the light dissipated, the teenagers found themselves back in the clearing where they had first entered the woods. They had no memory of how they got there, but they knew that something had changed. They had found what they were looking for, but at what cost? Chapter 3: Lost in the Woods. The woods were dense, and the canopy of leaves above cast a deep shadow on the forest floor. As the group of teenagers ventured further into the woods, they found themselves lost and disoriented. They couldn't tell which direction they had come from, and every path seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the forest. As they stumbled through the undergrowth, they started to experience strange visions and illusions. One of them thought they saw a ghostly figure flitting between the trees, while another heard whispers in the wind that no one else could hear. Their sense of reality was shaken, and they weren't sure if what they were seeing and hearing was real or just a figment of their imagination. Despite their fear and confusion, they had to rely on each other to navigate through the woods. But as they encountered obstacles and disagreements, tensions started to rise. One of them wanted to backtrack and find their way back to town, while another was convinced that they were close to discovering the source of the strange occurrences in the forest. As the sun started to set, the woods grew darker and more foreboding. They stumbled upon a clearing where the trees thinned out and the ground was covered in a thick layer of mist. They couldn't see more than a few feet in front of them, and the mist seemed to swallow up all sound. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the trees. They weren't sure if it was one of their own or something else entirely, but they knew they had to move quickly. They stumbled through the mist, calling out to each other and trying to find their way back to safety. But the mist seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles and confusing their senses. They were lost, alone, and terrified, with no idea what horrors lay waiting for them in the heart of the forest. As the night closed in around them, they realized that they were in a deadly game of survival, where the stakes were life and death. They had to find their way out of the woods before it was too late, or risk being lost in the misty hollows forever. Chapter 4: The Cabin in the Woods. As the group stumbled through the woods, their feet sore and their stomachs empty, hope began to fade. Night was falling fast, and they knew they needed to find shelter soon. Just as they were about to give up, they saw it in the distance, an old, abandoned cabin. The cabin was nothing like they expected. It was small, with weathered wooden walls and a sagging roof, but it was dry and appeared to be the only shelter available. As they pushed open the creaky door, the smell of musty air and old wood filled their nostrils. The group worked together to make the cabin as comfortable as possible. They set up a fire in the fireplace, gathered blankets, and tried to make a meal out of what little food they had left. As they settled in for the night, they felt relieved to be safe from the dangers of the woods. But as the night went on, they started to notice strange things happening. A door would creak open on its own, a rustling in the bushes outside would startle them, and they began to hear whispers in the dark. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Their fears were soon confirmed when they saw a shadowy figure lurking outside the cabin. They could see its eyes glowing in the darkness, and they knew it was something sinister. They tried to stay quiet and hidden, but the presence outside grew bolder and more aggressive. They were trapped, with nowhere to go and no one to help them. They had to fight for their lives against this unknown entity, using whatever weapons they could find. The night was long and filled with terror, but they managed to survive until morning. As the sun rose over Misty Hollows, the group emerged from the cabin, battered and bruised, but alive. They knew they had to keep moving, to find a way out of the woods and away from the evil that lurked there. Chapter 5: The Dark Secret. The group of teenagers had been wandering through the dense forest for hours. Their flashlights barely penetrated the thick fog that seemed to have engulfed the woods. They had found strange markings on the trees and eerie symbols etched into the ground. Something was definitely not right. As they trudged along, they stumbled upon a clearing, and in the middle of it stood a massive oak tree. The tree was unlike any they had ever seen before. It was ancient, and its trunk was gnarled and twisted. It seemed to emanate an aura of malevolence. One of the teens, Alex, felt drawn to the tree. He approached it, and as he got closer, he noticed a small wooden door set into the trunk. It was so well camouflaged that he almost missed it. He turned to the others, who were watching him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Guys, come look at this," he shouted. They gathered around him, and as Alex opened the door, they saw a narrow staircase leading down into the tree. Without a second thought, they descended into the darkness. As they walked, they heard strange noises, whispers, and the rustling of leaves. They soon realized that the staircase was leading them deeper into the earth, and they couldn't see anything beyond the glow of their flashlights. At last, they reached a cavern deep beneath the roots of the tree. In the center of the cavern was a stone altar, and on the altar lay a book. The book was bound in human skin, and its pages were filled with bizarre symbols and strange incantations. The teens were horrified as they realized what they had stumbled upon. They had discovered the dark secret of Misty Hollows. This was where the disappearances led, where the evil that lurked in the woods originated from. As they made their way back up the stairs and out of the tree, they knew that their lives would never be the same. They had come face to face with the darkness that lay at the heart of Misty Hollows, and they knew that they would have to confront it head-on if they wanted to survive. But for now, they had to get out of the forest before it was too late. They had uncovered the truth, but they had no idea what horrors awaited them in the coming days. Chapter 6: The Final Battle. The final battle had arrived, and the group was ready to face their greatest fear. They entered the woods with determination, their hearts pounding with anticipation of the unknown. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller, and the shadows grew longer. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. Finally, they saw it. The malevolent force that had been haunting the woods was in front of them. It was a creature made of darkness, with glowing eyes that pierced through the blackness. The group prepared to fight, knowing that this was their only chance to save themselves and the town. The creature attacked first, its claws tearing through the air. The group dodged and weaved, fighting back with everything they had. The battle was intense, and the group was pushed to their limits. But they never gave up, never backed down. As the sun began to rise, the creature weakened. It knew it was losing, and it unleashed its final attack. But the group was ready. They fought back with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. Finally, it was over. The creature let out a final, desperate cry before disintegrating into dust. The group emerged victorious, but they were exhausted, battered, and bruised. They stood together, victorious, and looked out at the forest. As they walked back to the town, they felt a sense of peace that they had never experienced before. They had faced their fears, fought for their lives, and emerged triumphant. They had saved themselves and the town from the darkness that lurked within the woods. And as they looked back at the forest, they knew that they would never forget the lessons they had learned. The darkness was always there, lurking just out of sight. But they had the strength and courage to face it, and they would never be afraid again. Thanks for watching this video on Midnight Murmurs. I hope you enjoyed diving into the creepy world of Misty Hollows with us. If you want to stay up to date on all our latest content and never miss an episode, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And as always, keep your eyes and ears open for the things that go bump in the night.